on September 4th, 2020, Marvel's Avengers launched on Steam and peaked at 28,000 players. 3 months later, fewer than 1,200 were left. It was sold as a game that would run for years. Welcome to the final save. This is the autopsy of Marvel's Avengers, a game with the most famous heroes on Earth. A budget north of $100 million and almost nothing holding it together once the credits rolled. To understand what went wrong, you have to start with who was building it. Crystal Dynamics made its name on tightly authored single-player adventures. They rebooted Tomb Raider in 2013 and turned Lara Croft into one of the best-paced action heroes in the medium. They were a studio that knew how to tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. In January 2017, Square Enix and Marvel announced a multi-year partnership. Crystal Dynamics, working with Eidos Montreal, would build something called the Avengers Project. For 2 years, that was all anyone had: a logo, a teaser, and the weight of the biggest entertainment brand on the planet. The reveal came at E3 2019. Square Enix closed its showcase with a cinematic trailer for A Day, the day the Avengers open a gleaming new headquarters in San Francisco. It is a celebration. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, and the Hulk are on stage, and then it goes wrong. A reactor explodes. The bridge collapses. Thousands die. Captain America is presumed dead. The Avengers are blamed for the catastrophe, and the team disbands. 5 years later, a teenage girl named Kamala Khan, a superfan who idolized them, sets out to put the band back together. As a story premise, it was genuinely good. But Marvel's Avengers was never just a story. It was pitched as a live service. New heroes, new regions, new missions, added for years, all at no additional cost. The campaign was the front door. Behind it was supposed to be an engine that kept running long after you finished, the kind of game you'd still be playing in 2025. That was the gap that killed it. Because Crystal Dynamics had spent a decade learning how to make games that end, and they had just signed up to make one that never does. The warning signs arrived before launch. On August 3, 2020, Sony and Square Enix announced that Spider-Man would join the roster as a playable hero exclusively on PlayStation. Same $60 game, same release date, but Xbox and PC players would never get the most famous superhero in the world. The backlash was immediate. Players canceled pre-orders. Studio head Scott Amos explained that the decision came down to the relationship between Marvel and PlayStation, not Crystal Dynamics. It didn't matter. The message landed badly. A game about assembling Earth's mightiest heroes was being carved up by platform. Then came the beta. In late August, the open beta went live across every platform, and the numbers were enormous. Square Enix called it the biggest beta in the company's history. For a moment, it looked like the doubters were wrong. Tens of millions of people wanted to be a superhero. A beta measures curiosity. It does not measure how long people stay, and that distinction is the entire story of what happened next. Marvel's Avengers released on September 4, 2020, on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and Stadia at full price. The reviews split clean down the middle. The cinematic campaign, Kamala Khan's story, was widely praised. Almost everything after it was not. Because once the campaign ended, the live service underneath was exposed. The endgame was a loop of repetitive missions across reused environments. Progression was a grind for gear with a number attached, a power level that gated content but never changed how anyone actually felt to play. You were collecting bigger numbers, not better stories. And it was broken. Launch was plagued by server errors, matchmaking failures, progression bugs, and crashes. The marquee feature, playing as the Avengers with your friends, was the part that worked the least. The Steam numbers tell the rest without commentary. The game peaked at 28,145 concurrent players. By December, it was holding around 1,100, a 96% collapse in 3 months. Within a year, concurrent players on Steam would occasionally fall below 400. Square Enix felt it almost immediately. In its November 2020 earnings, the company reported a quarterly loss of roughly 6.5 billion yen in its games segment, about $63 million, and pointed directly at Marvel's Avengers. Sales had come in at around 60% of plan. The damage went deeper than one quarter. Square Enix wrote down roughly 11 billion yen, over $100 million, tied to the game's development and marketing. CEO Yosuke Matsuda admitted, in the careful language of an earnings call, that the game had not met expectations. A $100 million bet on the Avengers had become a $100 million hole. For a live service, none of that has to be fatal. The whole premise is that you launch rough and you fix it in public. Destiny did it, Final Fantasy XIV did it. Square Enix's own studio had rebuilt a failed MMO into one of the most beloved games of the decade. The question was whether Crystal Dynamics could do the same. They tried. In December 2020, Kate Bishop arrived. In March 2021, Hawkeye. But the content came slowly, a new hero every few months. When the roadmap had implied a flood, the promised next-generation versions for PS5 and Xbox Series slipped again and again. Every delay handed the audience another reason to leave, and they did. In the summer of 2021, Crystal Dynamics made it worse. Despite promising that paid items would be cosmetic only, the team added real money consumables to the store, boosts that sped up the grind they had designed. For a player base already feeling squeezed, it read as the developer charging to fix its own game. After the backlash, they pulled them. There was one bright spot. In August 2021, War for Wakanda added Black Panther, a new region, and a self-contained story, and it was, by consensus, the best thing the game ever shipped. It was also, in hindsight, the last real swing. The expansion that proved Crystal Dynamics could still do this arrived to a room that had mostly emptied out. And then, finally, Spider-Man. He launched in November 2021, more than a year after the controversy. Still PlayStation only, dropped into the game with almost no story, no real cutscenes. The character that had caused the loudest fight before launch turned out to be one of the quietest additions after it. By early 2022, Square Enix had seen enough. On May 2nd, the company announced it was selling Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal, along with Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, and the rest of its Western catalog, to Embracer Group. The price for all of it was about $300 million. Some analysts noted that Square Enix had essentially sold 3 studios and a library of beloved franchises for less than it had spent chasing live service streams. The new owners inherited a game that was already winding down. On January 31, 2023, Crystal Dynamics confirmed what the player charts had been saying for 2 years: development on Marvel's Avengers would end. The final update shipped on March 31st. Official support ended on September 30, 2023, and the game was delisted from every digital storefront. You could no longer buy it. The studio's farewell post was gracious and quiet. They thanked the players who stayed and warned that after the support date, they could not promise to fix anything that broke. A game that had been sold as the start of a decade-long journey had a written end date inside 3 years of launch. There's a small mercy in the epilogue. Rather than switch the servers off and brick the game entirely, Crystal Dynamics later patched it to run offline and unlocked every premium cosmetic, every outfit players had paid for, and every one they hadn't, for free. The store that had caused so much friction was, at the end, just given away. So what actually killed Marvel's Avengers? Not the campaign, which people liked, not the heroes who were faithfully made. It was the model. Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics looked at the most valuable brand in entertainment and decided the way to monetize it was a grind, a loot treadmill bolted onto a story that didn't need one, built by a studio whose entire strength was making games that end well. They had Iron Man, they had the Hulk, they had $100 million and the attention of the whole world for one weekend in August. And they spent it building a machine designed to keep you playing forever in a game almost no one wanted to play for more than a month. The heroes were never the problem, the forever was. If there's a dead game you want us to autopsy next, leave it in the comments. The final save runs on the ones that didn't make it.